As we all know, the 2023 car reveals are upon us. It's one of the most exciting times of the year as we get to see what the teams have come up with, not just with technical aspects, but also with their liveries. So, in the spirit of the livery reveals, we'll have a look back at some of the most iconic liveries throughout the history of the sport. Now, designing a livery is very important. Not only do you need to think about placing your sponsors on the car, but you also need to make a livery that looks quick and stylish for marketing and promotional reasons. Some teams stick to a signature livery that rarely changes, much like Ferrari or Red Bull, while others adapt their livery to the sponsors they have, much like Haas's short-lived 2019 Rich Energy livery. The livery really signifies what the team is all about. Now, there have been hundreds of famous and iconic liveries throughout the 70 plus years of Formula 1. This list includes cars from 1968 through to 2020, with liveries known for their beauty, but also the impact the car had on Formula 1. The first car on this list is the Lotus 49 that competed in the 1968 World Championship, notably driven by Graham Hill. Now, this car is included in the list not necessarily for the beauty and aesthetics of the actual livery, but instead because of how it revolutionised Formula 1 sponsorship. Before the Lotus 49, Formula 1 cars were painted entirely in one colour, historically representing the country that the team came from. But the Lotus 49 was the first ever to paint its car with a title-sponsored livery. In this case, it was the Gold Leaf Cigarette Company. Soon after, all cars followed suit, and it changed the face of Formula 1 liveries and sponsorship ever since. Next up, we have the McLaren MP422 that competed in the 2007 season, driven by Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. Coated in the famous Vodafone livery, this car went on to win the 2008 championship and gave us some incredible moments with Hamilton and Alonso fighting it out as teammates. But this livery is also very controversial, as after McLaren won the championship, they soon had it taken away from them following the Spygate scandal between McLaren and Ferrari. Now, this next one is a personal favourite. It's the Jordan 191 from the 1991 season. I would say this may be my favourite livery aesthetically due to that stunning 7-Up livery, but others on this list are simply more iconic. However, this doesn't mean the Jordan 191 wasn't significant. This was the first ever car that Michael Schumacher drove in Formula 1, and the first ever Jordan Grand Prix car. So all in all, it was the birth of one of the greatest drivers of all time, and for a very successful team. However, sadly, the 7-Up livery only remained on the car for the 1991 season. Next on the list, we have the Ferrari F2004. This unsurprisingly competed in the 2004 season with Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello behind the wheel. And now, when you think of Ferrari, you think of their iconic red livery, and this car is the first that comes to mind when you think Ferrari. It was the final car of Ferrari and Schumacher's dominance in the early 2000s, and it seriously went out with a bang, winning 15 out of 18 races, and gifting Schumacher his record 7th World Championship. I am sure you will find this car on millions of people's walls around the world. Next on the list, we have the Lotus 79 from the 1978 season, driven by Mario Andretti and Ronnie Peterson. Now, not only is this car famous for its beautiful but menacing black and gold livery, one that's been replicated all around the world ever since, but also because it's changed the face of aerodynamics in Formula 1. Lotus boss Colin Chapman introduced ground effect with this car, which incidentally is the foundation for the design of the 2022 Formula 1 cars. So this one simply must be included in the list. Next up, we have the Renault R25 from the 2005 season, driven by Fernando Alonso and Giancarlo Fisichella. Coated in the vibrant blue and yellow Renault livery, this car is famous as it marked the end of Schumacher's dominance with Ferrari and announced Fernando Alonso as a true great in Formula 1, as he stormed to the title, winning by 21 points ahead of Kimi Raikkonen and 62 ahead of Schumacher. However, the iconic yellow and blue livery only remained for one more year, but it was enough time for Alonso to squeeze in another championship. Now, third place may not be on everyone's list. I'm talking about the Mercedes W11 from the 2020 season, driven by Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. Funnily enough, you may remember this started out as Mercedes' classic silver livery for testing, but following the Black Lives Matter movement, they changed it to an all-black livery, and boy did it look good. Like something straight out of Darth Vader's garage, this car wasn't just menacing to look at, but also to compete against. The W11 was an incredible piece of engineering and was the closest a Formula 1 car has ever come to perfection. Of course, it dominated the championship and gave Lewis his record-equalling 7th World Championship. In second place, I've got a car that has given us the greatest fairy tale in the history of Formula 1. It's the BRAWN BGP001 from 2009, driven by Jenson Button and Rubens Barrichello. After the Honda team went bankrupt, the team boss Ross Brawn bought up the team, saving hundreds of jobs, and having finished 9th in the 2008 season, managed to win the 2009 championship, painted in its glorious white and bright yellow livery. The fact they had close to 0 sponsors just shows how much the team was struggling financially, but it allowed us to enjoy this iconic livery even more. Sadly though, after 2009, BRAWN GP was bought up by Mercedes, so we never got to see those special colours on the grid again. Now, I'm sure most of you know which one takes the top spot. Of course, it's the McLaren MP44 from the 1988 season, driven by Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. I think of all heated debates in Formula 1, this is one that everyone can agree on. Not only is it painted in the classic beautiful Marlboro livery of white and red, but the MP44 set benchmarks we'd never seen before in Formula 1. For 1998, we witnessed one of the greatest rivalries of all time between two of the greatest drivers of all time battling in the greatest Formula 1 car of all time. The MP44 won 15 out of 16 races. That's a 94% win rate. And the only reason it wasn't 100% was because Senna was taken out by a backmarker at the Italian Grand Prix while leading with 2 laps remaining. No other team has come anywhere near that close to colossal dominance. So there we are, that is my most iconic Formula 1 liveries of all time. They revolutionised Formula 1 in their own ways by either developing incredible technologies, introducing legends to the sport, or by setting new benchmarks. All the while looking absolutely brilliant. And you never know, maybe we'll see a new entry to this list from the 2023 grid.